All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to our Credit Reports and Scores workshop, which is our April workshop with the Financial Empowerment Network. I am very excited to have Becky House with us today. It's going to be great. There's a ton of information on credit reports and scores. So thank you, Becky, for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. I want to just go over a few things, a few logistical things, and then a little bit about the Financial Empowerment Network, and then we will jump in. So as a reminder, sorry, I'm still arranging all of my screens here. There we go. All right. So I'm Jennifer Quitos. I forget to introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Quitos. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the executive director with the Financial Empowerment Network. And I'm so glad you're here today. Welcome to our Credit Reports and Scores workshop. Just a couple of things. As you join, make sure you're muted. And go ahead, if you have not done so yet, introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to see who's here with name, pronoun, organization, and where you're at in Washington or elsewhere. Closed captions are on, so you should be able to click on the CC button and turn them on. They're enabled, so you should be able to see those if you would like to use those. And then throughout today's session, if you have questions, there's a couple ways that you can ask those questions. You can either drop them in the chat and I'll be monitoring that, or if you would prefer, if it's easier for you, you can raise your hand, and when Becky's at like a pause point, then we will call on folks who have questions. So please feel free to ask questions. This will be very, very interactive. And then this webinar is being recorded, so just be aware of that. If your camera is on and you speak, you will be on the video on YouTube. And I will send that link to the recording out in a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days. It depends on how quickly we're able to turn it around and get any editing done. But that will be available after this session, along with some resources and the PowerPoint slides from Becky's presentation. I'll drop the link in the chat in just a moment for where you can find those. And it was also in the email that has gone out. All right, I want to take just a moment because there are quite a few of you that I don't know yet. And so I want to take a moment to talk about the Financial Empowerment Network and a little bit about what we do. So we are a nonprofit that does not provide direct services, but rather work with other providers like all of you. So we envision communities where low and moderate income individuals and families are able to achieve financial well-being. And our mission is to advance financial empowerment through partnerships that support access to affordable, effective, and relevant services, products, and resources. So I hope my goal today is that you will learn about some great information and resources and tools that you can use with all of your clients and community members, but also that you're going to learn something you can use for yourselves as well. We all have a credit report, we all have a credit score, so this is useful for all of us. So the Financial Empowerment does a few things. We have free virtual workshops, such as this one that you are attending right now. That QR code will take you to our events page, or you can go to that link right there. We have a couple of really great workshops coming up in the next couple of months. So in May, on May 11th, we have a workshop titled Increasing the Financial Wellbeing of Immigrant and Refugee Communities. I'm really excited about the panel that we're putting together. We have one or two more panelists that we'll be adding in the coming days. But you can see we have Macy Birdwell from World Relief, Elizabeth Escobar from Express Credit Union, Doshari Gunaratne from Chase, and Olga Kola from Mother Africa. And the panel will be moderated by Donna O'Connor with HopeLink. So it's going to be a great one. And then in June, we are working on a fantastic workshop titled Making Home Ownership Accessible, Spotlights on Opportunities and Resources to Get Ready. So this workshop is for everyone, for low and moderate income folks. Also, we have a great panel that we're working on putting together. I remember attending a similar workshop when I was newer to FEN, back when I worked at a partner agency and was attending these meetings myself. And my key takeaway from that workshop was that the most The folks who most commonly use the down payment assistance programs are teachers, police officers, and social workers. And so like here we all are, right? That's kind of us and our crowd. Folks that are moderate income that are being priced out potentially of the communities that we live in. And so, come join us in June. June is home ownership month. And so join us to learn about opportunities for your clients, but also for yourselves as well. In addition to our workshops, we have a couple of other things going on real quick. We host a financial coaching network each month. It's the fourth Wednesday of the month. I will drop this link in the chat in just a moment. If you're interested in joining us next Wednesday, Becky will actually be back. We'll be talking more about credit reports and scores and kind of discussing what we do with all this information with our clients. Like, what is our role? What are the boundaries? When do we need to refer somebody and where do we refer them to? And, how do we support our clients while we do no harm on their credit as well? So it's going to be a great conversation. We also host the foreclosure prevention work group, which just met yesterday. We meet the third Wednesday of each month from noon to 1:30. And we have our new statewide financial wellness provider directory. So you can find a list of organizations that are offering financial coaching, counseling, and education programs across the state. If you check out the list and your organization is not on there, there's a link that's live now where you can actually enter the information and get your organization added. So take a look at that. In addition, we are Financial Empowerment Network is the lead organization for Bank on Washington. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but we currently have 16 financial institutions across the state that offer Bank on certified accounts, which mean they are low cost and accessible to folks who are and underbanked. If you would like more information about Bank On, you can check out the website there, the QR code, or feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. There's lots of ways to connect with us. We've got our fenwa.org website. We also have bankonwashington.org. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and there's my email. I will also drop it in the chat in just a moment. So please stay in touch and let me know if you have questions. All right, so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. Closed captions are enabled if you'd like to use them. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we will call on you. And with that, I would like to introduce the reason that we're all here, Becky House. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who do not know Becky, which I can't imagine there's a lot of you who don't, but if you don't know Becky, she is a fantastic longtime partner of the Financial Empowerment Network. And she is the Director of Strategic Initiatives with American Financial Solutions. In her role, Becky oversees AFS's strategic partnering, housing counseling programs, financial education initiatives, and grant processes. In 2021, Becky was awarded the National Foundation for Credit Counseling's Agency Innovation Award for financial education programs. And in 2019, she was awarded Educator of the Year by the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. She also serves on the board of the Financial Empowerment Network and as a co-chair for Bank on Washington, and has over 25 years of experience in program development in nonprofit organizations. Becky is a certified financial educator through the NFCC program and is often quoted as an expert advisor for media outlets such as US News and World Report, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Money Magazine. And you may have seen her with Jesse Jones. So with that, thank you, Becky, so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for that stellar introduction as well. That's a little embarrassing, but it's okay. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and kind of jump right into it. Before we get started, I do want to say there's a couple things I want to say. Again, as Jennifer said, my name is Becky House, and I'm with American Financial Solutions. We're actually a division of North Seattle Community College, the foundation there, and we do business as American Financial Solutions. So we focus a lot on financial education, one-on-one financial counseling to help people improve their financial lives in a variety of different ways, whether it's through housing, whether it's through improving their credit situation, building credit, paying down debt, budgeting, all of those types of things are things that we help with, and we work on. And I want to take a moment to recognize and to just let everybody know here too that when I come to these classes, when I do classes, I look at them at two different levels. When I work with people, I look at it at two different levels. One, there's kind of the policy level, and two, there is the on the ground level. So when we talk about credit and we talk about credit reports and scores, we teach these classes so that people understand how the system is set up now and how to be able to get into that system and how to be able to access it and how to be able to use it for their financial empowerment, really, to get the most out of that system. That doesn't mean that I agree with the way that the system is set up, and I think that that's where we all have an opportunity to push for policy changes on how credit reports are used to evaluate people, and I think that I'll just leave it at that so I don't get too political. But anyway, that's my spiel for the day. So we're going to start out really basic today and then kind of get into the nuts and bolts and the weeds of credit and credit reports and credit scores. And I want to say one more thing, that when, we're talking about evaluating someone's, financial situation, credit and credit reports and the credit scores are really just one piece of that puzzle. There's also, we have to look at the income and longevity of someone in their employment, or longevity of, someone in using credit, which does boil down to credit. But there are other factors that are involved in making those financial decisions. So this is just one of those, the credit report and the score. So again, I'm going to go very, very basic, and then we'll dig in. And as I like to say in my class too, there's a lot of information we're going to try to cover today, but there's a lot more information that's in my head. So questions are fantastic because it does help to pull that information out of there. Okay, so here we go. Are you guys ready? I hope I'm ready. All right. So the first thing I like to just lay out on the table is that I hear from a lot of people that in order to have good credit, I have to go into debt, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to go into debt, or they're telling me why they, don't want to participate in the credit system, which is logical to me. But at the same time, I also know the ramifications of not participating in the credit system right now, which we will talk about. But there is a difference, right? So I can have the ability to use credit. I can have a credit card that has a credit line of $1,000. And I'm not going to owe any money to that credit card company unless I use that card and charge up, expenses on that card. So you can have credit available without owing money. And that's one of the first things I, try to embed with people when I'm talking to them. Which most of the time when I'm talking to someone, it's after the fact. They've already got debt and they're, trying to figure out what to do about it. But again, just in case. So the way that our system is set up right now, I use credit, or I make an application for a credit card, or I make an application to rent a house or an apartment. And that information gets sent to one or all of the three major credit reporting agencies, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. That information gets sent to them. It creates that credit history. So all of that information is getting added to a credit report. Now, other servicers, other lenders that I work with can pull that information out of that credit report. And if they apply a credit score to that, that's going to tell them how likely am I to repay my debt? How responsible am I with my finances? So we have this credit report where everything is ending up, all of this information ends up on this credit report. But the score is technically, it's a separate product. We very often see those two things together, but they really are separate. We all have a credit report without any score on it. But most of us want to see that score because we want something to tell us, is this good? Is this middle ground, or, where am I at here? Okay. So, and as I was saying, when we think about credit and why credit is so important in the way that our society is at this point in time, so many pieces of our lives revolve around that information in our credit report. So if we don't have credit and we don't have a credit report, or we have negative information in that credit report, it's going to cause us issues. It can cause us issues in things like obtaining employment. I was just working out with the Yakima Nation earlier this week, and there were several people that had to come through a class with me because they have conditional what do they call it, badges through the gaming commission, because they had issues going on in their credit. So that part of that was, attending these classes and working on, fixing those things. We also work right outside the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, which the federal government asks for security clearances for those employees. And so sometimes people have to go through counseling in order to get a job or to keep their security clearance or to not lose their, that's the same as keeping their security clearance. If people are, wanting to rent a house or an apartment, that's one of the things that people are looking at, those landlords or, tenant agencies, the information in their credit report. Is the person, do they pay their bills on time? And they're going to use that information to decide whether they will or will not rent to the person and how much of a deposit is going to be charged to rent. Our insurance coverage, right? If we're driving, our insurance rates are partially based on that information in our credit report as well. If we're turning on utilities or we're turning on cable or internet or cell phone services, they're all doing the same thing, checking our credit report to see if they should offer us those services. And if they are they going to charge us a deposit? How much of a deposit is that going to be? And then, of course, the kind of standard, credit report and score, looking at our credit for credit cards or to buy a car or to buy a house. So again, so many pieces of our lives are tied up in that information in our credit report and that information that gets collected about us. So it's really critical for people to understand it, to understand how it works, and to do the best that we can to make sure that it is showing positive information about us. So we typically recommend people visit annualcreditreport.com to get a copy of their credit report at least one time a year. You can get a copy there every 12 months for free from each one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies. They don't come with a score. People can pay to add a score on, but it is really good information to check whether or not you do get access to a score or not, because it's the information that's getting reported about us. So we want to know, is it accurate? Does it paint the right picture of how we're managing our finances? And for a lot of people, the statistics hold true year after year after year in the United States. 1 in 4 people has an error on their credit report that is significant enough to cause issues with employment or cause issues with getting credit. So again, really, really important for people to check their credit reports. This is the site that we recommend that people use to get at least one copy of their free credit report from each one of the 3 major bureaus. There are other sites, I'm sure we've all heard of them, where people can get free credit reports, and some of those sites come with credit scores. If you look at the difference in credit reports, there is a difference, I should say, that you can see the information is not as distinct or as specific as you get when you pull the credit reports from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Not to say that it's inaccurate, it's just not the same level of detail. And then the scores, we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, but that it's always questionable. I always say this, if somebody's showing me a free credit score, is that really the score that I want to be focused on? Is that the score that I'm going to rely on if I'm getting ready to, make a major purchase or something like that? And my answer is probably not. And we'll talk about why in a little bit here too. So as the name implies, annualcreditreport.com, right? You can get your credit reports through them for free online. That's usually the easiest and the fastest way to do it. Sometimes people cannot answer the security questions that it will ask, or they answer them incorrectly, so they don't get access to it. Or maybe that they don't have anything, they don't have a credit report, so nothing is coming up online, and then they either need to switch to requesting that report by phone, which is going to be a lot of answering those questions about ourselves again to prove our identity, to access the credit reports, or they can go by mail. And one of the handouts that is going to come out from this course is the form that people can use to fill out to send in if they want to get a free copy of their credit report. And they're going to order it through the mail. Again, it's still coming from annualcreditreport.com, but it's going to come through the mail. And the thing about getting it through the mail, I always recommend people front load the request. So with the document that you have to fill out, also including a copy of an identification that is like a picture ID with an address on it, including their social security cards or something, that ITIN number that shows what that number is, so that that can be matched as well with the credit bureau's information that they have on file. And if the ID that they're using doesn't have an address, or the address is outdated, then to send something else that would have the accurate address that would probably show with the credit bureau. And the reason for that is when you go through the mail, there is no way to verify the person's identity except by providing those documents. It doesn't say that on the form that you need to send those things in, but after 15 years of doing this, at least, I don't know, it's become apparent that that's what they're going to do. They come back to people and say, you need to send us this information in order to get a copy of the credit report. So obviously, because of the information that you're submitting by mail, if you do it by mail, we recommend people do not, just stick it in a regular mailbox with a flag up, that they take it to the, post office directly, or put it in one of the post office blue boxes or something like that, because it is really sensitive information that's in that form. Again, though, the easiest way is to go straight through annualcreditreport.com online and make those requests. It will show you each request one at a time. So you would request, let's say, TransUnion, then you would get to see Experience, then you'd get to see Equifax, if that's how you wanted to do it. Some people stagger it. So, now they would check Experience, 3 months later, they'll check TransUnion, 3 months later, they'll check Equifax. Which is fine. I think that's a great way to do it too. Just keep tabs on the credit report. The one time that I recommend people do it all at the same time is if they haven't checked their credit reports in, quite a while. It's a good idea to check them all at the same time, because not all creditors report to all 3 credit bureaus. So if the information only got reported to one, it's going to take longer to find that out. Okay, so that's a lot of information on just getting the credit report. I feel like I'm just talking forever. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the basic kind of information in a credit report. We really divide them into 5 sections, right? A credit report. So we have our basic, identifying information. Who am I? What's my name? What's my social security number? What's my date of birth? Maybe not with the year, but the actual month and day. That information. Addresses that I've maybe live at now, or that I've lived at in the past. Sometimes there'll be identifying information from employers, maybe, that we've worked with over the past, and that information's been reported, not by the employer, but by, someone that we applied for a loan for, or we applied, to rent an apartment, and they uploaded our employer information. So it's definitely really critical information to check and review, and make sure that it is your information that is being shown there, and you recognize all of that information. I try to help people focus on keeping it really limited. So, there's not various spellings of my names or misspellings of my name on there, and having those removed. If you want to have something changed or removed in that section of a credit report, it typically cannot be done online. It has to be done through the mail, because you're going to have to, sometimes it can be done online, I shouldn't say, but often you're going to have to send in, again, identification that shows what your name is, or, if the date of birth is wrong, or if the social security number is wrong, they're going to need that information to be able to see that information, to change that on the credit report. Has nothing to do with the credit score, but again, it is that, identifying information. And I actually have seen someone turn down for a loan because that their name and their social security number did not match what was on that credit report. They actually had multiple social security numbers on their credit report, which was a whole separate issue. But anyway, so it does happen. So then we have public record information. The most common,
Becky,
yes, ma'am.
there is a question in the chat while we're talking about identifying information.
Mhm.
How important is it to change, say, an incorrect address on a credit report?
That's a great question. So if it's an incorrect address because you know you no longer live there, but it used to be a correct address, then I wouldn't worry about correcting it. If it's an incorrect address that you never lived at, then that would be something I'd be more concerned about changing and having it removed from the credit report, and just letting the credit reporting agency know that I've never lived at this. I never lived at this address. That is an incorrect address. Because at that point, you don't know. I mean, if it's like one digit off, I suppose, then it's probably not a huge issue. But if it's a completely different, state or something like that. I had somebody one time, the first thing on her credit report, there was all these addresses coming up for Michigan. And it turned out that, yeah, she was a victim of identity theft. Someone had completely stolen her identity. It was all credit card, mortgage, everything. So if it's way off, that would be my concern, that at some point maybe and it could just be a mistake that somebody at the credit reporting agency mixed something off. So mixed information, I guess I'm trying to say, which they say never happens, but it happens. So there we go. Okay, then so the public record information on a credit report is really the most common thing that we see in public record would be a bankrupt. So if somebody went through the court system, that's going to create that public record that they filed bankruptcy, and then that would be added to their credit report. It is, bankruptcy is one of those things that definitely has a negative impact on a credit report or a credit score. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It does mean that, there's going to be deductions and points, and it puts you into a different group really for scoring. But that's typically, like I said, the most common thing that we will see in public record information. So every once in a while, you will see some legal financial obligations. You might see tax debt. You might see like child support or past due alimony, although those are typically in like the collection area of a credit report, which we're about to talk about. So again, most common in a public record is going to be a bankruptcy. And then which certainly does impact the score. Then we have collection agency account information. So these are accounts that are already past due. So when we're talking about a collection agency, if you're not familiar with a collection agencies are third parties that an original creditor is either contracting with or who has sold a debt to collect that debt. So let's say that I love to use the hospital. So let's say I have a Harborview medical bill, and I never paid it. And Harborview, contacted me several times to try to get me to pay it. I didn't have the money. So they finally said, well, we're not going to get this. So we're going to either contract with ABC Collections, or we're going to sell it to ABC Collections in order to get that debt. So Harborview is not going to list that on my credit report, but that collection agency is going to send me a notice that says, hey, you've got 30 days to dispute this debt, and if you don't, it's going to show up on your credit report. And at that point, it would come into this collection agency section. And there is a negative information on the credit report. It can cause a score to drop. Collections can have a lot of varying impacts on credit reports depending on how many collection accounts there are, how much is owed in collections, that kind of information. I can see there's a question in the chat. Can people remove a charge off that has been paid off? If so, how? Very carefully, I'll say. So can you? Yes, it can happen. Will it? Possibly. So if I have an account that has charged off, and I go back and which charged off means the original creditor said, I'm not going to be able to collect this debt. So again, I'm sending it somewhere else. And I, the original creditor, am probably going to try to take a tax break on that debt because I never got paid for it. And that can happen with any kind of debt. It can happen with a credit card. It can happen with a, cable account, a cell phone account, medical bills, all of those types of things. So if I do go back and make an arrangement to pay that debt off, people talk a lot about pay to delete, which means that you're asking a creditor to, if you pay them, will they delete the information? Pay to delete are technically not legal. You can't do that because you're asking the creditor or the collection agency, or they're saying, yes, we'll essentially not tell the truth to the credit bureaus and have this information removed from the credit report, deleted from the credit report because it's inaccurate information. But as the consumer, I can make a dispute and say, this account is inaccurate for whatever reason now that I've paid it. And if they don't respond, that creditor or that collection agency, then that information can come off the credit report. The thing that we see a lot of, right? So this it takes me into what I consider a scary kind of category, because I hear a lot of people, and a lot of people come to me and say, well, so and so said I should just dispute everything in my credit report that's negative, and if they don't respond in time, it'll come off my credit report. And that's really a half truth. So even if they don't, so let's say if you dispute something on your credit report, they have 30 days. What happens is you dispute it to the credit reporting agency. That credit reporting agency is then going to contact the creditor or the collection agency that is reporting that information. At that point in time, the ball is in that creditor or that collection agency's court. So they need to come back to the credit reporting agency and say, yes, it's accurate and it should stay like that. No, it's not accurate. And yes, it should be updated. Or if they don't respond, then it will come off of the credit report. So they have a 30-day window to do that. They can technically have an additional 30 days. But let's just say that they didn't respond and somebody, the creditor says, well, it comes off of the credit report, right? And then the next month, that collection agency or that creditor reports that information again when they're doing their normal monthly reporting to the credit reporting agency. It's going to show up. It will come back on the credit report. So you get a lot of people who are dealing with, I forgot what they're called right now, but the credit repair, like credit repair organizations. And they'll be like, well, they told me, that they're going to get all this stuff deleted from my credit report and yada, yada, yada. And I go, well, here's the reality of that. I mean, it might be deleted, but it's going to be deleted temporarily, very often what you'll see is it'll come back. So there really is no quick fix for, things that are negative in a credit report. But I'll say one of the, probably to me, what is the most important thing when I'm talking about credit and talking to someone about credit is that we can focus, we very often focus on the negative information in the credit report because that's pulling down the score. But the reality is the way to fix the negative information in a credit report is to add positive information to the credit report. So I'm going to say this, and hopefully it's not controversial, but my belief is that we all have a limited pot of money, and I can either spend my time focused on these debts behind me that I didn't have the money to pay. And please don't think I'm saying not to pay your bills, because that's not what I'm saying. But I can focus back here, or I can focus forward and on my future. So I can make sure that all the bills and the debts that I have now going forward are paid on time every time. And I can work on adding positive information into my credit report rather than, trying to get rid of this negative information that's in my credit report. And it's timed, right? It has a timeline. It's not going to stay in there forever. So eventually it is going to come off of my credit report. And even before it comes off of my credit report, the older it gets, the less it's going to impact my credit report and my credit score. So I can, like, here's another example, you have somebody who has a couple of collection accounts on their credit report and really nothing else. So they technically, in the reality of it, they don't really have a score because there's nothing to score. It's just collections. So paying those collections, they're still going to have no score. They'll still have nothing because it's collections. They paid it, but they still have no credit score. They have to be able to get that information, positive information into the credit report. It's been, I mean, that's it. It's the focus on positive information. So that, like I said, that's my big spiel on credit, is really focusing on the positive there. So collection agency, like I said, it definitely has an impact on a credit score. It certainly will pull a credit score down. And again, the more collection agencies someone has, and the higher the amount of debt that they owe among those collection agencies, that's where I would look. That's going to have the biggest impact, I guess I'd say. So account information on a credit report. This is the stuff that we want to see in a positive way. It might have other negative stuff in there too, but when we're talking about account information, it's our credit cards, our store cards, mortgages, car loans, student loans, those types of things. So credit-based accounts, and it'll show us, what, who do we owe? How much do we owe? Are we making our payments on time every time? How long have we had the accounts? Are these joint accounts? Are these, my own accounts? So it's just myself that's responsible, or is it me and my, spouse? All of that information is in that account information, and it's also going to show me if I do have any late payments. So if I have, in order for it to show up on a credit report, I have to be at least technically 31 days late in order for it to be reported as late to the credit reporting agency. So, if I am at 10 days late, definitely go for it, make your payment so it doesn't hit that 30-day mark. It's not going to show up on your credit report as a late payment. Yes, someone might get a late fee. If you haven't had late fees before, or, if it's been very rare, then I would always call the creditor and ask them to waive the late fee. And again, never worry about contacting the creditor. That's another thing. So always stay in touch with the creditor. Okay. And then, so that account information, if you put together public record information, collection agency information, and account information, that's the biggest chunk of someone's credit score. That's, how much do they pay their bills on time? And that account information also tells us how much of their available credit limit do they use. So if again, back to that $1,000 credit card, if I'm using, more than 30 to 25% of that, it can cause my score to drop. So again, that's another big chunk of that score, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then there's the inquiry. So who's looking at our accounts? And that really varies, but I will say that for us, we can look at our credit report as much as we want to. I mean, anytime we want to look at our credit report, that's fine. It's not going to count against us. It's when we're applying for loans that can cause it a dip in our credit score. So what I caution people against is lots of inquiries, for like credit cards or personal loans, things like that. If it's something to do with a mortgage, if you're applying for a mortgage or you're applying for a car loan, I let people know that there's a time frame that you can interest rate shop so that you can find the best deal. So, go to your bank or go to your credit union and apply for a car loan or apply for a mortgage, whatever it is you're looking for. And go to some other ones too in the community, look and see, who does so-and-so recommend, and make those applications. And as long as it's within that time frame, every single one of them will show up on your credit report, but they only count as one inquiry. So instead of getting dinged 50 times, you're only getting dinged once because you went out and were shopping to get the best deal, which is a good thing to do. Definitely a good thing to do. Okay. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, Tina just said in the chat, I thought it's always good to pay by the due date. Don't freak out if you're a day or two late. Yes, there are fees, but not necessarily a change in scoring. Exactly. That's exactly it. Just get it paid before that end time. Do we know what the time frame is? I'm not sure what the time. Oh, for the inquiries being merged, it depends on the credit score. So like a Vantage credit score, which I know we haven't talked about today yet, but a Vantage credit score lumps everything into a 14-day period. So whether it's car loan, that's 14 days, mortgages, 14 days, even credit cards are 14 days on a Vantage loan. But don't go based on your Vantage score. But anyway, but the other, in terms of FICO, there are different variations of FICO credit scores as well, which is the one that we really focus on. And those are going to be typically anywhere from a 14-day to a 45-day window. So I, try to encourage people to get their shopping done in basically a 14-day window, whatever they're going to do. Okay. So timelines for information, when we're looking at negative information, on a credit report, most of the information has a 7-year timeline, and the clock starts ticking when the account goes past due with the original creditor. So it's not, if it gets sold to collections, the clock does not restart. It's done whenever the original payment, was missed with the other, with the original creditor. Like I said, it can get sold to collections 50 times, 50 different collection agencies, and the clock does not restart. So it's really important, when you're working with people to make sure that they're keeping track of those bills and of those debts and when things are hitting the credit report as well, even if they're not able to pay them, just so they kind of have that timeline in mind. If it's a civil judgment or civil suit, that can be reported on the credit report for up to 7 years or the statute of limitations, whichever is longer. We do have some legal fee financial obligations that will last up to 10 years on a credit report. Bankruptcy also can stay on a credit report from the time, 10 years from the time that it's filed. So again, though, that's not, with any of these, it doesn't mean that the person's credit is, doomed for 7 to 10 years. It just means that this negative mark may be on there for that long. And it might restrict some of what someone does with their credit, but it doesn't mean that they can't do anything with their credit, and it doesn't mean that they can't do things that are really meaningful, like, buying a house or something like that. So just keep that in mind too. And if it's positive information, there is no time that it will not. I mean, it can be reported as long as the creditor continues to report it. If it's positive, it can stay on that credit report. Late payments are considered negative information in a credit report, so those will show for that 7-year history. They'll stay on there for 7 years. And when it comes to these timelines, they should automatically come off. They on a lot of consumer credit reports now that you see, it'll actually show the date that the item should be coming off of the credit report. Our credit reports, you still have to do the math, but anyway, you shouldn't have to request it to come off. That's the credit reporting agency, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, responsibility to make sure that they're not showing overdue. Well, not overdue, well, that's not a good word, but things that should be off of the credit report. It should be automatic. Okay. We talked a little bit about disputing information in a credit report. If it's okay with everybody, I'm going to leave this for right now. There is one of the handouts that we have for today goes over in depth how to dispute information on the credit report. And there's actually a letter and everything that people can use to try and, figure out what to say essentially, and when you're asking to have that information removed from the credit report. And Tara said judgments no longer report to consumer credit reports. Correct. Well, they can report, but they're not listed. The credit reporting agencies have said they're too fraught with issues, being able to track the identity of the person who actually is responsible for the debt. So they are no longer showing those judgments. So if somebody gets, which is great for the credit report, but it's still in real life is not that helpful for people. So what Tara is talking about, so let's say that that Harborview bill that I have, let's say it was a $10,000 bill, right? It goes to collection. It doesn't even have to be that high, but it goes to collections, the collection agency. The collection agency is trying to get me to pay, and now they've decided that they're going to sue me. So they're going to take me to court. So I get served with a summons, and I have to answer to that summons and say, why I didn't pay or whatever. If I don't answer, that collection agency automatically gets a judgment against me. I lose because I didn't respond and I didn't go to court. So you definitely want to answer. But if they get what used to happen, if they got a judgment against you, it would show up in the public records section of the credit report. But there were so many issues with people having judgments on their credit reports that weren't theirs. That's one of the things that the credit bureaus we're able to agree upon and say we're not going to list those on a credit report anymore. The unfortunate side of judgments, though, is that they do open the door for if the agency, the business or the collection agency gets the judgment, it opens the door for them to garnish wages, to freeze bank accounts, to get liens against real property. So if you own a home or property, they can put a lien against those. So they're nothing to be taken lightly, just because it's not showing on the credit report. It's actually a terrible situation. So we try to get things before it gets to that point, hopefully, as long as we can. And that's another thing I'll say about when we're talking about disputing information on a credit report, when we're talking to people who we're like, well, I'm just going to dispute it all and, argue about it. What that does, again, the credit bureau notifies the creditor or the collection agency that this is happening. And now the credit bureau, the collection agency or the creditor goes, okay, well, so-and-so's doing something with their credit. So, they may have an opportunity right now to pay me on this debt. And it can it doesn't restart a timeline, but it can restart collection agency or collection activity if things have died down. And I remember several years ago, I was in a class with, I think it was, I don't know if it was Jennifer, I don't know if it was your class or somebody else's class, but it was through the Y. And there was a woman who had done just that. And she ended up disputing the information in her credit report. The collection agency came after her, sued her, got a garnishment, and it just snowballed from there. And she ended up being evicted because she couldn't pay her rent because they had froze her bank account. It was a disaster. And that's I don't have to hear a lot of those stories to just go, okay, we're done. We're not going to try that. But anyway, yeah, that's the thing. You have to think about, anytime you're interacting with the credit reporting agencies, you're also interacting with all of the creditors that are on your credit report because they see that information. So they have a right to see that information. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess. Okay. I am going to see, it's 10:51. What time are we?
Becky,
Yeah.
we have a hand up. Do we have time for
I'm
another
so
question?
sorry. Yeah, let's go for a question. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question, Becky. Hi, this is Paulette. I have
Hi.
worked with you before. I was under the belief that in dealing with a collection agency, and they're coming after you, you don't want to acknowledge the debt in order for it to re-trigger again. So what I'm hearing you saying is this woman had some kind of situation, and how was she interacting with the collection agency in order for them to start these proceedings against her? I'm a little bit unsure of what you're saying here.
Sure. So essentially what happened, so that she had gone and someone had said to her, dispute these debts that are on your credit report because they were older debts. And the collectors at that point in time, it didn't sound like they were really trying to contact her, but they were not, what we call zombie debts, debts that are past the time.
Right.
Collect. So she disputed them through the credit reporting agency. And what that triggers is the credit reporting agency sends a notification to the creditor that you're disputing with that so-and-so is disputing this debt. As a collection agency, I hear that and go, well, okay, then you're obviously this person's trying to clean up their credit report and, make changes. So they now is probably a good time for me to be reaching out to them to get them to repay the debt that they owe us. And that's what happened in this situation, is that they came back to her and said, hey, you know, you still owe us this money, you still owe us this debt, and, you know, tried to get her to pay. And she,
So was it not past the 7 years?
no, it was not. It was still on
Okay,
the credit
okay.
report. And that's, it brings up a good point too, because there are two timelines when we're talking about collections.
Mhm.
So there's the timeline for how long it stays on the credit report. And then there's a timeline for how long you can sue someone over that debt. So the timeline for suing in generalities here, and this is a class that Julia Kellison and I do from Northwest Justice Project on debt collections. So it's a full class. So I'm making it 2 seconds here, but technically for the most part for our state, debts that are incurred in Washington state through Washington state laws, the debt collector has 6 years to collect that information, or not to collect that information, but to sue, to bring a lawsuit over that debt, the statute of limitations. Yes, thank you, Tamika. So, and if they don't by that time, it's too late to sue, and that's where we go into zombie debt. And I see the AG's office has their hand up. Go, Elena.
All right, thank you, Becky. We're excited to participate with, to be able to come with you on this too. But I did want to address Paulette's question because I understand the confusion regarding, in the end, getting a judgment against you for a debt from a collection agency. So what I wanted to add to that as well is, as Becky explained, the gal probably was still within the 7-year or a period where a collection agency can bring a lawsuit against you. So for example, if a collection agency, they have to serve you, right? First, the debt has to be verified in the sense that they have to provide, the original creditor, all that information, right? And then once you have that, and then once, they know where the person who, the debtor, they know where they're located, they know their place of work, or they know their home, they are then served papers, right, for that collection and that judgment. Now, what I wanted to say, and this is where our office could definitely, use the information to assist us to make sure that collection agencies. So collection agencies are under the jurisdiction of the Department of Financial Institutions, right? That's who gives licensing to collection agencies in the state of Washington. But the Attorney General also makes sure that in addition to DFI, collection agencies are following state law. And so we have seen collection agencies that have attempted to file judgments against debtors after the 7-year period. So this is where it's very important, if it is after the 7 years, to make sure that that you have a resource in the Attorney General's office, Consumer Protection Division, to file a complaint against those agencies, because I have seen that in the past. It is far and few between. I won't say that, I won't say that all collection agencies do not comply with state law. The majority will and do in order to keep their licensing and in order to practice in Washington state. But there are also bad actors who go past that. So if you have clients, or if you have people who are concerned, that maybe their dates are, a little off, or they think, this is wrong, definitely have them file a complaint with our office, and I'll put our complaint form information in the chat and our call center number, but people can always give us a call for more information on this as well, because like Becky, we also give workshops and presentations and information, and just short workshops on collection, debt, credit, rights that people have in the state of Washington in regards to actual, debt that's still within the timeline, and then zombie debt as well.
Right. Lena, I have another question for you, and I'm definitely a supporter of Bob Ferguson. That's my dude. That's my dude. But if you're not licensed, a collection agency in the state of Washington, can you collect in the state? That came up a lot with the payday loan stuff. Remember
so
that?
as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Financial Institutions has jurisdiction over collection agencies and the ability to collect in Washington state. what happens a lot of times is that maybe somebody will say, okay, I live in Washington, some collection agency is calling me from the state of New York, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know where this is coming from. I'm not sure. You can go actually to the Department of Financial Institutions and see if they have the ability to collect or practice or have a business license in the state of Washington. Now,
Okay.
regardless, let's say you can't find the information, or you're not familiar with how the website works, you're having some difficulty, that doesn't mean that you couldn't call DFI or call our office and either file a complaint or get some information on whether or not this collection agency that is in another state is able to collect in Washington state.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank both of
Sorry,
you.
Becky, I wanted to jump in and add some information just because everything that you're saying is really great, and I that the concern with collection is also something that really concerns our office as well, because we have seen people getting a judgment against them from an old debt. It's not common. I will say that it is not common, but it has occurred, and our office is really concerned with collection agencies that are not complying with state law. So
Yeah.
thank you, Becky.
Very true. No, thank you. Thanks for chiming in there. And it's another great resource. The AG's office is another great resource for people. I know I was trying to find my links. I had my links up from last night for DFI's website for the Washington State licensing of collection agencies, but I wasn't fast enough today. But if you go to the presentation with Julia Kellis, and Jennifer dropped that in the chat, all of those links are available in there too, that's all about collection accounts or dealing with collections in our state. And the AG's office is one of the resources listed on that, in that class too. Okay, I am just, in the interest of time, I'm gonna flip past a couple financial tools, although I do wanna hit this one, because it's an example of something that a lot of people deal with, and it's mindset. It's partly a mindset. People think, okay, well, I'm in debt, I'm stuck, I'm just going to have to make my normal payments. There's nothing else I can do. I don't have an extra $500, I don't have an extra $200, or I don't have an extra $300 or whatever to, focus on my debt. So in this example that we have here, this is a person who's got a $5,000 balance on a credit card. We're just saying it's one credit card. Their interest rate is 18%. If they just made their standard payment, which is 3.5% of the balance, their first payment would be $175. And if they just continued to make minimum payments, they'd end up paying back from that point. If they never used the card again, they'd pay back $3,500 in interest. So the total amount would be $8,563 from that point. And it would take them 13 years and 4 months to pay that off, just making the minimum payment. And to me, I mean, yeah, it's not great that they're paying $3,500 in interest, but to be sitting with a $5,000 debt for 13 years is, that's not good. So if they instead said, $175 is really all I can afford to send, so I'm going to send $175 every single month. Instead of making it just the minimum payment, they're going to send this every month. You can see that it cuts down the interest. 2/3 of the interest is gone, and the time drops to 3 years and 2 months. So they save 10 years worth of time just by keeping the payment consistently at $175 instead of just making those minimum payments. And then this is just saying if they had an extra $25 to throw at it, right, then that would save them a couple $100 more, and about 4 months more in time. But again, my point in showing this is that a lot of the time, we're talking to people who are just totally stressed. They're like, I don't have any extra money. And if you can break it down into something that's, bite-sized, easy to digest, well, I'm not at, you don't have to make, a huge chunk of payment. You can still make smaller payments, but make them consistently and save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money, trying to get out of debt. So anyway, I just wanted to share that one tidbit, and then we're going to flip over to credit scores, more specifically about credit scores. So when we talk about credit scores, they are again, as I said in the beginning, they're a separate product from the credit report, but they're calculated based on that information in the credit report. The higher the score that someone has, the easier it is for them to qualify for whatever, renting a house or an apartment, or opening a credit card, or getting a car loan, or whatever it is. But we all have many, many different credit scores. There's a lot of different credit scoring models out there. Even within the two that we're going to talk about today, there are different variations of those credit scores. The Vantage score we see most often as a consumer-facing score. So there are consumer sites out there that provide free credit reports and free credit scores. And they, at least one of them that's very, very popular, provides a Vantage credit score. You can see that it looks very similar to a FICO credit score. And I will say that there are some lenders who are also using the Vantage score now too, but again, it's not as popular. The FICO score is used in nearly 90% of all lending that is done in the United States comes through that FICO credit score. So that is the score that we really focus on, when we're talking to people about credit and finances. That's the one that we want to make sure is at the spot it needs to be for people to be able to get the services and the credit that they might need to have. So I want to show you what this looks like on paper. Again, the scores look very similar. There are, slight differences in the different categories. Excellent, 740 to 850 on FICO, 750 to 850 on Vantage. Same thing, you have to get to 580 to get out of the very poor on Vantage. You only need to get to 550 to get out of the very poor on FICO, which I know that's not, where everybody's trying to get to, but anyway. But this is what it looks like on paper. So this is someone who came in to see us for housing counseling, and they had the credit reports and the scoring information from one of those consumer sites that faces us. It was TransUnion and Equifax. So you can see their Vantage scores were both in the poor range, 624 and 613, but their FICO credit scores, when we pulled their credit reports, were both in the good range. So a huge difference in how those scores play out for people. Even though the underlying information is exactly the same. Does that make sense? Because it's the credit report. The credit report is the credit report, period. The data is the same. It's how the score works, how that score is applied. So if we look at, what makes up a credit score, what you see here are 6 kind of general areas that make up a credit score. These are not specific to a Vantage score or a FICO score. FICO, always focuses on 5 of these. One of them is a little bit different, but anyway, we'll talk about that. But in a FICO score, though, and honestly for any other scores, the 2 most important factors are, do we pay our bills on time? And how much of our available credit are we using? So essentially, do we keep our balances low in that second one, amount of available credit we used? So making on-time payments, paying down balances are 2 key ways to build or improve credit. And again, I want to clarify that, people don't have to keep a balance on a credit card to have good credit. That's one of the things I hear a lot in classes is that, oh, well, my brother said I should just buy something and make payments, to have that history, or I should just, get a car and make payments for 6 months and then pay it off. And I'm like, well, I mean, do you need a car? I don't know. But anyway, that's a different story. And the reality is, you don't, like I said, you don't have to have the debt. When I'm talking to people about building credit and they're new to credit and they don't have credit cards, we'll talk about using a credit card for just, normal expenses. So maybe they pay a tank of gas with that credit card and then they pay it off in full every month. Or they, pay their Netflix account with that credit card and then they pay it off in full every month. So they're not carrying a balance from month to month. So they're not paying interest. They know when it's due. They're, so they aren't going to end up with any late fees or missing payments, things like that. And they're not going into debt. That's the whole idea, is to try to avoid having that debt. And I know that, I can sit here and I can talk to people about that. But I also know life is life, and most Americans don't have $400 in their savings account. That's the news that we hear all the time. And so we may turn to credit and end up, charging up that credit card because our tire went flat or because our washing machine was leaking all over our house, or, my kids needed, new shoes for school or whatever it happens to be. But so I'm just, I'm talking about it, credit in a perfect world. And then there's the reality of the real world and what does that look like? So anyway, I just want to throw that out there too. The idea, again, focus on low balances and on-time payments. Those are the two biggest keys. A few other things that do help to build or improve credit, limiting the number of applications for credit. We talked about that earlier, different scoring models judge applications in different ways, but there's not any score that's going to be improved by having a lot of inquiries on the credit report. Again, you can check it yourself all you want, but just, applying for credit is not what we want to do unless we really need it. If the other thing I'll just say, the length of your credit history, the longer the credit history on a credit report, the better. It's just showing that, you've been able to manage credit over a long period of time is positive because it shows that consistency and the ability to weather different economic conditions. That length of credit history really looks at the person's oldest account, their newest account, and what that average length of time is. And then the total debt and the time since the debt was incurred really ties together with, it's kind of like the rapid account buildup. So if someone's out there applying for a whole bunch of different credit cards, car loans, those kinds of things. Normally you want to avoid opening new accounts in general, maybe one at a time, except if like I said, there is a need, you need to purchase a new car, or you are applying for a house, or you feel like it's time to look at different credit card offers or something like that. The other item I want to mention is the unpaid debts, like collections. Again, these are considered negative accounts on a credit report, and the score really considers how many, I know I said this before, but how many collection accounts there are and how much those accounts total. But again, I want to stress that the most important factors are making on-time payments and keeping balances low on credit cards. So those, for a FICO score, those two things in green account for 65% of a credit score, so the biggest chunk. That utilization, essentially what we're looking at, as I said, I use the example of $1,000 because it's easy for me to do math with $1,000. So if I have a credit card that has $1,000 credit limit and I'm using it all, I'm using 100% of my available credit limit, and that's going to have a negative impact on my credit score for sure, no doubt about it. It's one of the, I'll say easiest, even though it's not necessarily easy to pay down debt, but it's one of the quickest ways to, help a credit score is if you can get that debt paid down and get that credit utilization back under, 30 to 25% of the available credit limit. That, it'll fix the score pretty quickly. That once someone has, multiple missed payments, then that it's going to take longer to recover from that, to fix that on a credit report. And I will say that, well, I'll just leave that for now. Anyway, okay. So the last piece here that I want to talk about in our remaining time is just different credit building strategies. Because remember, I was talking about the importance of adding positive information to a credit report, and that's what we really, we want to focus on. Yes, there is a discussion and talk about, repaying things that are past due and collections, prioritizing, and that's part of that video that Jennifer dropped in the chat too, prioritizing debts, which one should it be focused on, which isn't for us to say, that's for the person to say too, but there are some guidelines for that. But again, the other side of paying down debt is building credit, adding positive information. So when we look at the different credit building strategies that are out there, one of those is using a secured credit card, and these are all pretty standard. That with a secured credit card, typically someone goes to a bank or they go to a credit union and they make an application for a secured card. They usually put down, it depends on the credit union or the bank, but anywhere from $100 to $500 as a deposit, and that money just sits in the bank account. So the person, if they're accepted, if their request is approved, then they get a credit card, and typically the credit card limit is roughly what their deposit is. So if they gave them $300, then their credit card limit is going to be $300, and they use that just like a credit card because it is a credit card. So the money that they used as a deposit is not being used to pay the card. So if they use the card, they still have to pay that debt down, pay that debt off. Typically, those plans usually last 12 to 18 months, which is enough time to get information into that credit report, start adding to the credit report and building a score, or building a more positive score. And then at that point in time, people can, make choices either to, close that account, get the money back, and start another account, maybe an unsecured account. There are some financial institutions that will increase the limit above what that deposit is, so that so now part of it's secured, part of it's not secured. And again, it's using that credit card wisely it's always using the credit card wisely, but also investigating other strategies for building credit, once they get to a point where their credit is at a level they can qualify for different types of credit. The share secured loan, there are a few different variations on this. I'll say now there's some businesses, organizations out there that do like a self-pay loan where people are making payments to themselves, and those get reported to the credit reporting agencies. There are credit unions that also do share secured loans. That's where this originally came from, which is essentially the same type of thing. So you are depositing money into the credit union as a deposit to open up a secured loan. It's secured by your membership and by the money you're depositing. Typically what happens is that credit union gives the person right back the money, and then the person has to make payments towards that loan. And it's getting reported to the credit reporting agencies, so it is building credit. I usually tell people to take that money and deposit it, in their account, keep it in their account, and set up automatic payments so that we don't have to worry about making a payment. There is going to be a little bit of a shortage because there is usually an interest rate or a fee associated with the share secured loan. So if I deposited $300 and got a loan for $300, I'm paying back, $325 or $350, whatever it is. So that does have to factor in there to that decision to use that. And full disclosure, I'll tell you, we do have a credit building loan, which works very similar to that, except there is no upfront thing. People just make payments in, and at the end they get their money back, and it is $300. Anyway, another option for adding positive information is to be an authorized user on someone else's account. So if that person has good credit and they're willing to authorize you as an authorized user, that account that you're authorized on will also show up on your credit report. So for instance, let's say Jennifer, I ask her if she will make me an authorized user on her credit card. So now, and she says yes. So her credit card is now going to report to my credit report as well as hers. So whatever she's doing with that credit card, that's what's going to show up on my credit report as well. And it does help to bolster my credit score. It helps add positive information to my credit report. Now, if she, all of a sudden she's struggling and she's missing payments and things like that, that's what's going to show on my credit report as well. And the other thing is to think about, what do I do with that information? So now, my credit's improving because I have this information coming from Jennifer's credit report. What's my next step? And my next step might be opening a credit card on my own, or opening a loan on my own, doing a share secured account, doing a secured credit card, something like that. So what is the ultimate plan? I don't want to stay an authorized user on her account forever. And hopefully she's just not going to let me use the card too, because if I run it up, we better have an agreement over who has to make the payment on that, which it should be me if I'm running it up. Co-signing is another option for building credit, and it's not really an option that we recommend, but it is something that is possible in a co-signing situation. Same kind of scenario, right? So I asked Jennifer if she will help me to purchase a car and co-sign on this car for me. And she says, sure, yep, I'll do it. So that means they're looking at her credit, they're looking at my credit, and they've, said Becky doesn't have the credit, it's not strong enough to do this on her own. So we're going to add Jennifer. So at that point, the debt is now mine and Jennifer's. I have to make those payments, but if I don't make those payments, they're going to come back to Jennifer to make those payments. And if I miss payments, it's going to damage her credit report as well. And the other thing that sometimes people don't think about when they're a co-signer is that it also can impede their choice to get a loan. So let's say that Jennifer wants to, needs to borrow money for a car, she wants to buy a house or whatever, she might not be able to because she's tied up in the loan with me now, and that's her debt. It's considered part of her debt. Or she may end up with a higher interest rate or something like that. The only way to get Jennifer off of that loan is if I refinance whatever that loan is out of her name. So, which could be easy or could not be easy. So we'll see. Paulette?
And mute here. Thank you. I had a question. I want to go back to the Vantage score versus the VICO. How do you determine if you're going to apply for something, which one of these scores they're using, and can you ask for the FICO to be used instead of the Vantage?
No, typically you cannot. They're whatever that organization or business uses is what their standard is that they're going to use. What I typically tell people is really you want to check both scores, know what that Vantage score is, but before you go to make a major purchase, the likelihood that they're going to use a FICO score is pretty high. So that's the score I would want to know is what that FICO score is. And even with that, so if I go to like myfico.com and pull a credit report and it shows me my credit scores, it's probably not going to be the exact same score that lender is going to see. I mean, it should be, within the same realm, but it's still going to be different because what I'm getting from them is probably going to be a different model than what that lender is using. Mm-hmm. Most lenders right now are using the FICO 8.
Okay. My comment was that on some of the strategies for people rebuilding their credit seems to be a little enabling. I don't agree with co-signing unless it's your child and they better be responsible. And then the secured credit card, I think that for my strategy, it would be enabling people to change some behaviors. Because a lot of people say they don't have money to do this, money to do that, but in actuality, they do. Even myself, when I look at okay, I'm not going to do this impulse buying. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to really reel it in. And you'd be surprised at how much extra money you have a month. So I think a lot of that has to do with a change in behavior in the clients that I'm primarily going to be dealing with. That's where I want to start, and to empower them to believe that, yes, you can buy a home, you can do these things, but it takes discipline.
Yep.
And in this economy right now, it's hard. It's real hard. That's all.
No, that's great. And it is, I 100% agree with you. I think that's what the reality of it is. And I think that, again, our goal today is talking about credit and, kind of where credit is coming from and how to do that, how to empower people to take, to feel like they can, yes, they actually can take control of their finances. And, credit is just one piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and how much money when your credit score is low, and this is all, strategic, who came up with the Fair Isaacs scoring system in itself, how much money you give away paying on interest. You get nothing in return. Yeah. You're just giving money away, late fees. If you can't pay your rent on time, you need to come up with a strategy. Go to talk to your landlord or whatever. And I know that they just now changed the law to cap it at 10. I don't think that's fair for the smaller landlords, because if your mortgage is late, it's going to cost you more than $10. But the bigger, apartments, okay. But things are just not ideal for low income folks.
No, definitely not. There's a bigger chunk coming out from people who are low income in every way you look at it, whether it's housing, gas, food, everywhere.
Don't even mention gas. I'm
Yeah.
traumatized. I'm traumatized when I go to the grocery store now.
It's terrible. It's true. It's 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam?
I just wanted to share with the group another thing in terms of co-signing.
Mhm.
One thing that I see, I work at Verity Credit Union, and one thing, and I am a member solutions officer, so technically I am collections for the credit union. And one thing that I see, when I call on accounts is, I may call on a delinquent account where there's a co-signer involved. And maybe, the person who originally was supposed to get the loan and they're not paying, then, we'll call, the other person and we inform them. They're like, well, I'm the co-signer. What people don't realize is, people might go to buy a car loan and they can get farmed out to different financial institutions. Okay. And whoever grabs that loan may take it. And we're a part of something called CUDL, Credit Union Direct Lending. And so, we get these loan deals that come in. And there may be a co-signer, primary situation that comes in, and we basically base our loan for that car loan on using the co-signer's credit information because they have the better credit.
Right.
So the intent behind it is to give a better interest rate and reasonable payments. But what happens in a collection scenario is people don't necessarily know that you are not the co-signer. You're actually the primary on the loan. And we spend a lot of time educating people about that. So I just wanted to make the group aware that, there are situations where you may think that you are going down as co-signer, but you are actually used as primary.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And that's what I was saying. It is co-signing is the very least of our ways. It is technically a way for credit building, but again, it is one of the very bottom choices when it comes to helping someone get established. And we just as a caveat for that, when people contact us, most people don't contact us because their finances are going swimmingly, right? They contact us because things are in trouble. And so when we see co-signing situations, we don't see happy endings. We see, people who are now not talking to each other because, someone couldn't make the payments. And usually it's not a purposeful thing, it's because somebody lost a job or somebody got sick or, some crazy thing happened, but the end result's the same, which is unfortunate. Yeah. Elena?
Thank you, Becky. Yes, going along the same lines of co-signing, and thank you, Pam, for bringing that up as well. It's so weird. I was asked to present on co-signing because there's some immigrant communities that have recently, populated Washington who have in their home country have no inclination of credit, right? And so a lot of them are co-signing for each other, even though they're not family members, right? Because I was always told, if you're going to co-sign for someone, co-sign for a family member because, they're basically always going to be around you unless they cut off the whole family, right? But it has to be somebody that you really trust to do this. And so this community is a community of people who all speak the same language and they're co-signing for one another and they aren't really understanding. And that's a community that English is not their first language. Now, those of us who English is our first language, we still don't really know, like Pam was stating, what it means to be a co-signer. So, I just recently put together a presentation just last summer on, it's called To Co-Sign or Not to Co-Sign, right? Like the whole Shakespearean to be or not to be. So basically, we outlined, because unfortunately, this is an information that is even on the Attorney General's website in our credit and information that we have online. There isn't a lot of information out there for people who are thinking about becoming a co-signer for someone else. And unfortunately, as you ladies said, relationships are ruined occasionally, not through any malicious intent, but the fact that and this is something that Pam said, it's not that the person got the credit, the other person is just a co-signer. That first individual, right, the primary lender, only got that loan because of this other person. If this other person wasn't on the loan, they wouldn't have gotten it. So that other person is basically the anchor. And a lot of people don't understand, unfortunately, that concept and what it means. We've had people ask, okay, well, they're making really good payments. Can I just get it out? Because not only are you liable, but it also reduces your credit, and it also goes against your actual ability to get other things. If you help somebody else sign, co-sign for a car, depending on your credit, right, how precarious the situation might be, your credit score might have dropped as a result of you being on this other loan. You may not be able to qualify on your own for a loan on yourself, depending on your situation, right? So a lot of people don't understand that co-signing does utilize your line of credit as well.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Okay, we only have like 2 minutes left, so I want to try to just kind of cook through these last two things. First of all, the other way that we talk about for credit building strategies, and this is really focused around like auto buying, right? So if someone is, and a little bit of housing sometimes, but saving for that down payment, because that's one of the ways that we see people be able to get into a car loan if they have more money to put in as a down payment. So like if I'm buying a $10,000 car and I'm bringing, $2,000 of my own money to the table, I'm investing in that, and I might be able to get another financial institution or another credit union to take my loan with that down payment, and even get a better interest rate than I would if I was just trying to borrow with a $500 down payment. So having that money set up and set aside to help you make that transition, if someone wants to, like I said, just wants to purchase a car, or we even see people kind of work this through with renting, right? Renting housing. They can pay for several months at a time if they don't, and this isn't in place of necessarily negative credit, but in place of no credit. So, if they can say, I can give you 6 months worth of, my rent up front, that's really, it's a deposit, and they're paying for that ahead of time, and may be able to get someone to overcome the fact that they don't have that traditional credit history right now to get into that housing. So again, that all goes back to working with someone on what needs to happen so that they can feel financially empowered and feel like they can make these changes and make these differences in their lives. The last thing I'm going to bring up is the alternative credit history. The alternative credit history is a little bit interesting. We see people use this a lot, and there are different programs out there that also offer alternative credit history kind of creation for people. What it's doing is looking at all of the different things that we may pay that are not getting reported to our credit reporting agencies. So things like rent, or things like utilities, cell phones, Netflix accounts, maybe even medical bills, these things that we make monthly payments on, we're making them on time every time, and creating our portfolio that shows essentially that we make these payments on time every time. There are mortgage programs now that will help people get into home loans using an alternative credit history. Again, it's not in place of negative credit history. It's instead of no credit history, or instead of a very limited credit history. As I said, there's some programs some businesses out there that also offer alternative credit history kind of creation. One of them is through one of the major credit reporting agencies. Just to give you a little bit on how that works, what they do is get this information. You connect your bank account to the credit reporting agency, so they can filter through these payments that you're making on time every time for your electric bill, for your rent, for your Netflix, whatever it is. And they are adding that to your credit report with them. It's not all of the credit reporting agencies, it's only with them. Then that information is used, essentially is then shared or / sold to other businesses who have agreed to use this modified or boosted, that should give you a clue, credit report and credit score. So it is not something that, if you're looking at that credit report and it's saying that your score is, 720, that's a boosted credit score. So if you go to another financial institution that's outside of that network, your score is not going to be the same. It's going to be totally different. And that is causing confusion for people out there that are, that are using those services and using those products, because it's not clear that it's not helping their credit overall. It's just helping their credit as long as they stay affiliated with this particular program. I hope that makes sense.
So thank you, Becky. It is 11:32. So I can stay on for Becky for you to finish. I know folks have been asking for your contact information, and I want to make sure you have a moment to talk about AFS. And I see Paulette has her hand up. So let's wrap up. And if folks are able to stay on, we will keep going if that's okay. But I want to make sure, Becky, you're able to share this information with us.
Sure. Just for us, we do, again, we're American Financial Solutions. We're a division of North Seattle College Foundation. We do this. We teach financial education classes. We teach, we work with people one-on-one on all kinds of personal finance topics, from buying houses to people who are facing foreclosure, to pre and post bankruptcy counseling and education, to dealing with debt, whether it's collections, credit cards, those kinds of things, and just general credit counseling, just general budget counseling. So if people are trying to figure out how do I get over here, right now this is where I'm at with my finances and I want to get over here, that's something they can talk with a counselor about and come up with an action plan with steps, and check in with their counselor and try to move that forward. So a lot of different services, check us out. We have our website up there, myfinancialgoals.org. We also have free classes online as well that cover everything from paying to college to talking to kids about money to setting financial goals and budgeting, all the usual stuff. And I think that's about all I have for today.
Thank you, Becky. If you're able to stay on, we can answer a few more questions. I'm here. So I did drop a link in the chat for our survey. So if you do have a moment, please I'm going to put it in again. We really value your feedback. So, and we are always interested to hear what you would like to know more about for future workshops. So take a moment to fill that out. And then we can keep doing some Q&A. So thank you, Becky. And Paulette, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have reservations about I believe it's Experian that will connect your bank account to improve your score. Mm-hmm. And I just know from my own experience, looking at somebody's bank account, I can glean so much more information about them and their habits than I can a credit report. And I'm just wondering how that exposure is. I personally, I wouldn't want to do that.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm trying to be politically correct. It's very hard for me to get on board with that, because I feel like it is a
invasion of privacy.
Well, I mean, you can say that there's the invasion of privacy. I also feel like it is oh God, what is the word? I just feel like it's taking advantage of people. You're essentially, you're like, let me see all of your stuff. I am definitely going to share all of your stuff with all of my partners, and it's really, is it really going to help you, or am I just going to put you in touch with all of my partners who may or may not have good services or products that are, good for you, who may have, may or may not have decent interest rates. And I just feel like it's fraught with potential abuse. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not trying to bad talk anything. I'm just saying that's where I come from on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Paulette. Elena?
I will add, that was a very neutral answer, Becky. I will add to that same inquiry, Paulette. Experian has been I think it was Experian. Now I can't remember Equifax, but if you go to the Attorney General's website, we have all the information on collection, or excuse me, credit agencies or credit reporting bureaus that have been victims of a data breach.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you guys all got those letters, which I'm assuming we all did, since we all, you know, were affected in some way, shape, or form, the entire nation was affected from the data breach of the credit bureau. You can look that, and I think it happened twice. So that is what, if you're speaking to clients and they're asking you, you know, whether or not you would recommend that they connect their bank accounts, or they're connecting, you know, additional identifying information, right? I mean, this, let's be honest, the credit bureaus already have your social security number, your birthday, your last, you know, 10 years of employment or more, you know, whatever. They have a lot, they already have a lot of information. And like Becky said, how much more do we want to provide them, right? And how much more is someone willing to expose their you know, their identity? So that would be a question. I mean, we can't, as I said, Becky gave a very great neutral answer. Us as a government agency, we also cannot say, yes, we recommend this, don't do this. We don't, it ultimately is a consumer's choice, but providing them the information to be able to make an informed decision is really the goal. And I know what Becky and Jennifer do, and ultimately what our office does as well, is just to provide as much information so that somebody can make an informed decision. So it's not that we would say yay or nay to that. It's just how much information, how useful will it be for someone's credit history, and how much of ourselves do we really want to be out there?
Exactly. And what service? I mean, what service are they really doing? Is it a fair service? Am I just putting myself, you know, in a situation where I'm going to get connected to things that are not actually beneficial to me? That's a big, you know, I mean, I don't know. I kind of have the mindset that everybody has my information anyway. So at this point, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I think, you know, something Becky, you've said a couple times, and I just feel like can't be overstated, is the purpose of all of this information. And Elena, you said this too just now. The purpose of all of this information is to provide it to our community members and our clients so that they can make informed decisions about what they want to do with it, right? And so all of this is information, and like in the chat has been like on fire, but there was earlier someone said about, you know, misinformation that's out there. And, you know, the purpose is to provide reliable information from reliable sources, and then folks can make better decisions about what they want to do with their credit, with their financial lives, with everything. And so just wanted to underscore that, like, we, you know, our role is to provide the information, but not tell folks what to do with it. It's really about supporting people in making the choice that makes most sense for them. And for some, it might be co-signing, and for others it's not. Or for some, it might be, you know, this sort of information sharing, and for others it's not. So great point. Any other final questions? This has been wonderful. It's a ton of information. Credit reports and scores is always a hot topic, as we have seen today. So thank you so much, Becky, for your presentation. Fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's participated, and Elena from the Attorney General's office for sharing some great resources and information that's available there. And I've dropped it in the chat a couple of times, but don't forget, we have more workshops coming up. So please join us for May 11th on the financial well-being of immigrant and refugee communities. And in June, we'll be talking about making homeownership accessible. And we have more great things planned throughout the year. So please join us and reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
You too.